In this Adobe Illustrator CS6 demonstration, I'm going to introduce to you the Appearance panel. The Appearance panel has a relationship with the Control panel, and we'll talk about the basic setup of your Appearance panel and its relationship to that Control panel as we make basic changes in appearance to a path selected on your artboard. I'll show you where you can access some really cool special effects and then resetting the path on the artboard back to its original appearance, especially if you go too far down the path and adding a bunch of special effects. It's nice to know that you can return to start. So, for example, if I have drawn just this really basic path on the stage, it's a basic square, I can do a lot of cool things to it actually using the Appearance panel. If you access it, you can find it possibly in this toolbar on the right for the floating panels. If you do not see it there, under Window, select Appearance. There's our Appearance panel. It's in its default settings to begin. You have a drop-down menu on the top right. You have Add a New Stroke, Add a New Fill, access to Special Effects menu, Clear Appearance icon, duplicate a selected item, or delete a selected item. So that's the Appearance panel in its default settings. If I select an item on the artboard, notice how it lets me know that this particular path is selected. It does not yet have a stroke applied, but we do have a fill color. I can change the fill and stroke color here in the Appearance panel, just as I have done in the past using the Control panel. And you'll see that if I make an adjustment, let's say I change the fill color here, it's reflected in the Control panel as well. It doesn't mean that I can't use the Control panel. If I change it back to that color that I had selected before, notice how it updates my Appearance panel. So there definitely is a relationship between the Control panel in the center and the Appearance floating panel. However, you can do a lot more with the Appearance panel. So let's take a look at some things we can do. I could add a stroke to this object. By click once on the stroke, it brings up two drop-down menus. I can change the color of the stroke. Let's add a black outline. And I can change the stroke weight, something you might be able to see. So there I have added an outline or stroke to this path. I can do some interesting things to this, like add special effects. I can access those special effects for this object that's selected by clicking the FX icon for special effects, and I have Illustrator effects or even Photoshop type effects to choose from. Notice that this effects panel is exactly duplicate of the effect main menu drop down across the top that you see here, effect and FX. So there's a relationship between those two items. And of course, I can access many different things. Let's say I have this item selected on the stage. If I click on Fill, I could add perhaps a drop shadow to this item. Under Stylize, I just happen to know drop shadow is found under Stylize. It brings up the drop shadow dialog box. And I can make some, different changes to what I want to see, but I could preview it first and decide how much I want that shadow to be offset. And if preview is checked, it does allow me to see what those changes do, and it's reflected. It does take up more virtual memory to have preview checked, but it does give you that convenience of seeing what happens as you make those changes. Now watch the difference. I'm going to click cancel. Watch the difference of adding a drop shadow. If my stroke is selected, let's say I'm using the effects panel and I go under Stylize and choose drop shadow, brings up the same dialog box from the Appearance panel. But if I apply a drop shadow to just the stroke, it looks a little strange because it's actually applying the shadow to the outline only and not the object's fill. So some of you will have some questions about that in the beginning, and it's kind of interesting to see the difference there. So it's a good idea to have fill selected if you're going to apply a stylized drop shadow effect. So let's go ahead and apply that effect. And let's do something interesting to the stroke as well. If I select the stroke, I could offset that path, meaning I could make this outline go outside of the box just slightly, and I can access that under Effects, Path, Offset Path. It brings up this little offset path box. Now the miter has to do with the how things are joined, how the edges are joined. We could make them rounded. Think of it as working with a miter saw, and it's reflected on how the edges are joined at the corners. What type of corner style do you want to see? I can preview and see how that offset path is going to look. We selected a round miter join, and I can change the size of that path if we wanted to like 1/8 of an inch, 0.125, and preview that. Once we're happy with our offset path, click OK. So now you can see as I make changes and add effects to the appearance of the path selected on the artboard, those changes are reflected here in these little layers. I can show and hide effects, kind of see how those effects have changed the look and appearance of this item. I can also delete effect. I can select any effect here on the appearance panel. In the bottom right is the trash can. I can delete the selected item. So it deletes the item that is selected. Now if I go and add a bunch of different effects to this, let's say I wanted to add another thing to this. Let's try an outer glow. Let's try a different color. That might be easy for you to see. Click OK, and let's say I start going down this weird path and things are starting to get a little ugly. And I can't remember all the things that I've done. Let's say I have a whole list of effects, and I just want to go back to the very base nature and the beginnings of this item. I can do that in two places using the drop-down menu of the Appearance panel. I can clear the appearance or reduce to basic appearance. Clear appearance is the same as this icon here for clear appearance. Let's see what happens when we click clear appearance. It deletes everything that we have done. So if you get too far down a path and you want to revert or return to the basics and start over, you can do that using this option here or the drop-down menu to clear appearance. Now what would be the difference, let me back up, to reduce to basic appearance? The basic appearance clears the effects only, but it keeps our stroke and fill colors. So that's a little bit of a distinction there. And this is your basic introduction to the Appearance panel. We will go into further detail about accessing different colors in a later demonstration. For example, if I click on the fill color here, it just brings up the default swatch panel. And of course, I can access other color books and different color groups from this menu. I can show different types of swatches. I could show only the color groups that I have made or only pattern swatches. If I want to return to showing all the swatches, I can do that. I can go to default swatches and maybe just show the basic RGB swatches. I can always access them here, but we'll get into more detail in a moment in a later demonstration about color books and all the different possibilities that can be accessed. At this point, it's just important for you to know that you can access those color options from your Appearance panel and also from the Control panel. And this concludes your introduction to the Appearance panel.